leaders are respected around the world. What's the potential problem? And that's the final thing I will say, when really it becomes obvious that there is lack of deliveries. Such as, for example, it seems to be becoming obvious in terms of the Central and Eastern Europe. Thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to questions.
Thank you very much. Please be seated, yes, to the panelists. Before I start the debate, I would traditionally, almost by definition, give another two remarks. One is about, to my mind, a missing link. We had 3 presentations and nobody mentioned, and this is a missing link to my mind, that One Belt, One Road and 16+1 has financial supplement, financial framework, which means that China, together with BRICS countries, already in 2014 initiated development bank headquartered in Shanghai of BRICS. And what more, next year, 2015, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank was initiated, Asian quote-unquote by name, but Chinese by portfolio and support. And this is an institutionalization of financial support of these ideas. And to some people, we have a debate if this is at the beginning of the direct challenge towards the so-called Bretton Woods system, which is American-dominated. So this is something about the missing link. And about the last presentation, you presented a lot of data on Chinese FDI in our region. I was studying that recently, very carefully, including our domestic here languages and local newspapers even. I published a study in Brussels recently on this issue, and it is surprising. All the data available is misleading. I will give you one example, but very significant to my mind. As especially the Polish audience here remember, we had the visit of President Xi Jinping here in Warsaw in June last year. And as usually, we signed some 40 agreements. All of them, almost all of them, not fulfilled formally. We also raised our relationship to comprehensive strategic relationship, the top possible level. However, what is hidden? Our intergovernmental agreements are not fulfilled, but the Chinese are very pragmatic. They came to the self-governments, to Łódź, to Kutno, to Opole, to Szczecin, to Lublin, and signed many agreements, and there is already Chinese investment, Chinese money, mergers and fusions, and this is undiscovered by official statistics. Even McKinsey and Rhodium, which is giving the best available statistics, not only Heritage, which you were using in your study. So, as someone who is traveling to China twice, sometimes 3 times a year, I know from my personal experience, if I'm flying to China or back from China, 90% of the people on the plane are Chinese. And this is also significant. So if this is hot politics, cold economics, I don't know. This is for debate. Ladies and gentlemen, we have half an hour, maybe a little bit more if we will have a hot debate. Now I am open the question and answer session. Please introduce yourself. You have 2 mics. Our speakers have the mics as well, so we can be interactive. please introduce yourself, and I will stay here to be a captain on this ship, if I may. Please.
Hello. My name is Yizhou. I'm one of the organizers here. I'd like to thank you again for coming here, for speaking, for giving us some fuel for thought and to think about China, because in our Center for East European Studies, we rarely go outside Russia and post-Soviet states. So I'm very happy that after all these years, some panel about China finally happened, and we can talk about China and all the implications that come from China to Central and Eastern Europe. So I have two questions, and one of them is with a special lean to Professor Wang. And it is, I'd like to know how does the Belt and Road Initiative work on the internal level of Chinese politics? Because I've heard it said not once that the initiative itself is used within the Chinese Communist Party as some kind of a weight that is torn around, that is moved from one friction to another, to one fraction within the Communist Party to another, like just to gain some political leverage within the party. I'd like to, I just like to you to comment on that. If it happens, if it does happen, or is there actually, are there any fractions within the party itself?
China is expecting 19 party congress in November this year. He will not say anything answering this question because it is speculative and he will be in difficult position. However, there is something inside.
And another question is I'd like to know, because as we know, there was talk about 2 billion yuan coming to the Central Eastern, not the Central Eastern Europe itself, but to the initiative. Like it was allegedly assigned for the whole initiative, and but as Richard said, no real and tangible effects were made. So I'd like to know if there are any plans, like for really tangible projects, things that money can be spent on, that we can talk about and that we can...
To put it shortly, you want to know where the money goes, and
I want to know where the money goes.
Go there.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Who next? Please here. You have the mic here. Okay, she will bring it to you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I am Javit Veli from Azerbaijan. I have two questions. One to Professor Wang. If you don't have any political or security agenda on your foreign policy, how Chinese government are going to protect its investments on One Belt, One Road project? Because this project passes over the regions that have unstable or ethnic conflicts or some other conflicts. So how are you going to protect your investments in this region? My second question to Richard Trucsanyi: do you have any research comparing the European Union foreign trade relations between China and United States of America? Do you have any research paper on this issue?
Thank you very much. Who next? Lady here, yes. I hope not to Professor Wang, because he will be overwhelmed, maybe.
Yes, you're mistaken, Professor
Next
Wang.
round you will be excluded.
He's very popular today.
Please.
Well, thank you very much for giving me a possibility to ask a question. And dear Professor, I'd like to thank you very much for your tremendous presentation. But I have a question concerning the Chinese participation in Shanghai Organization for Cooperation. What is your opinion? And how effective and resultative it is for the Chinese development? And can't we observe some internal, maybe rivalry for leadership? in the organization? What is the potential lead China, or maybe Russia, or maybe India is to become? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we have the first round. Professor Wang, many questions to you, and Richard, one to you. Professor Wang, are you ready to answer already?
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay, I do a quick response. First, about whether the Communist Party will continue this policy of Silk Belt Initiative. I think, well, as I know, that Xi Jinping see these international goals as more, I guess, easier goals than domestic ones. Domestic political reform, domestic gaps decrease, domestic industrial smog are much more tougher than the international achievements. So recent years, we see the figures. International investment by China, the number much larger than what we attracted international capital in China after Xi Jinping got in power. So this is, will continue, I guess. There are so many reasons, but this is very obvious. It will not change, changeable. What I want to say this first one. Second, but I also want to point out, there are some political obstacles in many Chinese views when we're talking about relation between China and Eastern Central European countries. First, that is many media, as well as some political figures here, figure out China, say, okay, your domestic human rights issue not good. Your market statutes are not satisfied the standard of EU. Your state-owned firms, companies got too much government subsidies. All this criticize makes Chinese commercial circles as well as some policymakers feel uncomfortable. Compared with African continent, they are much less criticized when we got some economic trade investment agreement. So this is, I guess, when our colleagues from Hungary said, there are some political goals. If you can say, yes, this is a kind of political goals. We hope in the future, the political misunderstandings will less and less for the better understanding each other. You know, when you go to China, you know why the government gives some subsidies to these state-owned factories. You know why the government try to do a lot, but still a lot of gaps due to so large territory. You know, in the coast area and the hinterland area, if you want to decrease the gaps, not so easy. You see, the whole Europe, including Central Europe, Western Europe, Nordic area, is only 2/5 of China's population. So not so easy. When I was young, I strongly criticized the Communist Party, Communist leaders, elites. But now I feel some sympathy. They have to be step by step. So the political understanding is very important to know today's China is not Stalin's model. It's not North Korea's regime. But we have our own characteristics. We want to do our own things by our own ways. But sometimes some Central European countries criticize China even much tougher than Trump, than Merkel. We don't understand why. So this is another, may I say, political goals or political obstacles. Last but not least, about SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. I think China's goals to build SCO with Russia are very different from what we call 6+1. Here in Central European countries, I think majorly we want to make some economic trade deal, use the money more efficiency, enhance both sides beneficials. But in Central Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, we feel some danger. We feel some threat because of the local separatism, terrorism. So SCO basically is not economic trade. That's the tools, that's the platform. But the major goal for China and Russia is try to curb the local, including China Western terrorism, separatism. So this is very diverse in two pictures, very different. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard?
Thank you for the questions. If I may, I will also explain a bit about the data, because thank you for bringing it out. As you mentioned, we really have extremely limited knowledge about foreign direct investment. I tried to also say that, but I went too quickly through my sources. So I actually used data from Rhodium, which is together with Merix. I used data from Heritage. I used Chinese MOFCOM data, and I use the UN data. This is pretty much the best thing we have. Plus, I also try to collect anecdotal information, such as those which you say from Opole and regional governments. So this is extremely important. On the other hand, I really think that we don't have any evidence of any significant increase of Chinese investment. As Professor, you mentioned, in the Czech Republic, Xi Jinping visited a year ago. Deals for like 10 billion euros were signed, with 3 billion supposedly, which were supposed to come by the end of the year. Almost nothing of that materialized. And now now the best investment with which we can point at is production facility of screens where 200 people are working on. This is really not something which would save Czech economy. So that about the data. And one more thing about this, there was a conference in Budapest a month ago, 7 people dealing with China-CEE relations, and I asked, can you name me one major achievement of 16+1? And there was no economic achievement. Everyone said people-to-people relations, stabilized diplomatic relations. Okay, so that about the data, but still that doesn't say anything about that it can come in future. I wanted to comment on the question where Chinese money goes. That was interesting because here in Warsaw, Chinese Premier Wang announced that $10 billion will be spent. Right now, or about 2 years ago, it was announced this money have been spent. But I really don't know where they went. And from what we see from the data, they probably went to government loans in Balkans for the highways. And this is really not investment, because the way how it works is that Albanian government gets Chinese money, builds the highway, but this money it has to return. So this is, economically speaking, not investment. And finally, the direct question whether I did research on, was it EU or CEE? EU. I didn't do research on EU. I look at the CEE mainly. In CEE, American role when it comes to trade is not so important. Actually, Chinese role is quite important, but due to imports, because there is massive imbalance. In Poland, I think it's 10 times, 1 to 10?
10 times.
Okay, so really big, and it may be even increasing. But when it comes to investment, there is much more American investment than Chinese. I doubt that there is one CEE country which has more than 1% of investment stock. Maybe some of the Balkan countries now. But for the V4 countries, Chinese investment stock remain far below 1%.
Professor Wang, you
just a very quick supplement. You see, there are at least 2 or several China. When we try to figure out how Chinese spend money, how to spend so-called investments or capitals. One China is so-called federal, central government China, by premier, by party chief, by some ministers. And then they commit something, they sign agreement with this government here, Central European countries. But many of these agreements will be very long, medium long term, which you can't say a very quick actual effections. But another one, or made in China, in Chinese we call the local China, or non-government NGO or commercial, non-state factors. For instance, recently, as I know, in China, there is an important meeting in Suzhou and Shanghai about 16+1, majorly not about federal government's central China, federal China, but about the southwest China, Sichuan, Chengdu, Chongqing, basically the provinces and local cities in West China. Because I know why, recently I went to there to give some lectures. They gave me so many different images or information sources, which different from capital Beijing.
Exactly.
So that's the problem. You got no data from the federal government, but you go to the reality or the non-federal level, you got another sources, images, tourists or some kind of trains or kind of private deals. So how to make this data together? We have no idea. So that could be some misleading, miscalculating.
I absolutely agree. This is also my discovery during my study. But if I may add one significant point concerning FDIs. Within this framework of 16+1, so-called flagship investment should be Budapest-Belgrade bullet train, which was signed during the third summit meeting of 16+1. It is not allowed until today because according to the European Commission statement and documents even published early this year, this is non-transparent. So we have many obstacles, bureaucratic, institutional, and mental. I mentioned in one of my interventions that this Chinese Academy of Social Sciences has published a series of books concerning our bilateral relationship, Central Europe or Central and East Europe with China. And probably the most important one is by Liu Zuokui.